And welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb, voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking, so I was looking for and finding the good. We found good in abundance because you have made the conscientious decision to tune into Marriage with Joy with our amazing, bright, beautiful, bountiful, beneficent panel. We have Dr. Diane Medved up in wonderful, beautiful, bright, sunny Seattle, Washington. Oh, I'm sorry, it's February. Okay, so it's not bright and beautiful, but it's beautiful. And down in the cold southeast, in Florida, no less, wearing winter clothing is our fabulous ambassador of happiness, and it's wonderful Maura. And hopefully about to join us soon will be Lori McDermott in the southwest part of the country. And then right in the desert, in this wonderful, amazing place called Henderson, Nevada, your humble host, Barry Shore, the ambassador of joy. And I am just tickled because I'm wearing a shirt that I don't usually wear, and I'm getting compliments from beautiful women. So I have to mention it. You know, if that happens, then you have to be, Lori, I'm going to first of all say, look at this. Are you in Southern California?
Yeah, I'm just in my kitchen.
Right. And she's dressed like it's wintertime.
Kind of.
But did you notice my shirt? Do you like my shirt?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Okay. I went fishing for a compliment, but I got her. Her bright face just said, yes, it's wonderful. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of fun today. As everybody knows, because the reason you tune into this, and thank God we have thousands and thousands of people, and we ask you to do two things. Number one, share this with 5 people. Yes, you want to do it with 50 people, 100 people, that's great also, but at least 5, because we want to get over to 50,000 listeners every month. We do this once a month, and it touches people. It deeply touches people. We get emails. We get, I don't get postcards anymore. Nobody does that kind of stuff. But I don't even know if you can buy a postcard these days. But we do get lots of emails and sometimes texts from people that say that they are just truly, truly happy that this exists. It's called Marriage with Joy. Not just it's a show about marriage. It's a show about marriage with joy. Because in our humble opinion, not just Barry Shore, but from the point of view of Diane and Maura and Lori, marriage is the most important institution in Western civilization. Notice I didn't just say the United States of America, Western civilization. It is a cornerstone, a bedrock, the capstone, to use all these different kinds of analogies, of what it means to have a stable, functional, growing, loving, caring, giving society. That's what marriage does. It can do a lot of other things as well. I mean, as I said, it's about joy. It can help you with children, raising children together if you are blessed to have children of your own, or helping other people with raising children, because marriage creates a bond between two people that is unique. See, it's one thing to say, I have a significant other. Not a terrible thing, but it's not marriage. Marriage is a commitment that goes beyond the self, and it enters into the realm of holiness. Yes, I'm going to use the H word, holiness. And to live in holiness is a very big responsibility, and that's really what we want to talk about today. We're talking about the R word and the S word when it comes to marriage. And I sent out an email to our wonderful panel because I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that was discussing finding your soulmate, S-O-U-L. And of course, I say that soulmate has 2 spellings, S-O-U-L, which talks to the holiness of a being, And SOLE, a soulmate. Hopefully you have one for your whole life, a soulmate. However, this particular article was either tongue-in-cheek or was about to lead into a book about how the romantic aspect of a soulmate was so outdated and so passé and so just déclassé, if you want to say. And in fact, we know that for many years. The idea of romantic love leading to marriage is a wonderful thing, but that's not what's going to sustain a marriage. It's great for a certain amount of time. Now, by the way, that time could be years, decades. Romance never goes away from a really great marriage. It's really what you do with the romance. When once as they say, the bloom is off the rose, well then, does the rose still smell as sweet? Or do you only see the thorns? So really, the issue with life is that the R word, the romance leading to marriage, obscures the other R, which I'm going to throw it out there, and then we'll have Diane lead off, as she usually does, and hits it out of the park, is what I call the other R word is responsibility. Because if you go into marriage based just on romance, either we call it attraction, infatuation, or lust, that for a period of time, that's going to wither. Now, what do you do after that? If you go in with a responsibility aspect based on values, you can build forever. You can build dynasties, not just your marriage, but really what you're doing is you are part of an unbroken chain that goes backwards in time for could be decades, centuries, and forward in time for eternity. That's the genius of marriage, especially marriage with joy. So on that as an introduction, we asked wonderful Dr. Diane Meved, who mentioned to me that, hello, Barry, I talk about this in my book, or several of her books actually, regarding romance and marriage. So Diane, would you please lead us off and not astray?
I'm not quite sure what the question is. This is the book that I talk a lot about, both romance and soulmates and what they mean. I think the article that you were referring to was trying to get people to consider marriage, even if they don't think they've found that romantic ideal they consider to be a soulmate. Because marriage does so much more for you, and it expands your soul and makes you into a different soul. And therefore, marriage has more to offer than just glomming on to somebody else that you feel is a lot like you, or who you feel completes you. That's not marriage. And I think the idea is that, unfortunately, marriage has become less and less popular as something people choose to do or aspire to have. And that also devalues the marriages that exist, and therefore creates families in which children don't feel secure about what marriage is. And that further diminishes the desire to marry. And all of this combined destabilizes our society, while at the same time detethering people from others, from children, from community, from our country, and it's only negative. So I think the point of the Wall Street Journal article that you referred to was to say, don't wait till you find your soulmate. Get married anyway, because there are so many important, basic, fundamental values that you then get to have only in the context of marriage. And so what are these things? We're talking about what I call in my book, Don't Divorce.
Again, the book is Don't Divorce, double D, Don't Divorce, by Dr. Diane Meved, triple D actually, Don't Divorce.
I talk about the idea that once you get married, and especially if you have children or you bring children to the marriage, you should look at it in terms of it being a family project. You are building a family for your life, for the life for your children, for the life of your spouse, and only together as a family can you proceed forward in this project of building security and love and connection that can last, and demonstrating to your children that it can last. You have to see it as something undisturbable, that you hold up as worthwhile. And I think that's a problem in our society, and why I felt I had to write this book, because people forget how essential it is for their own well-being. And they think the moment that they feel uncomfortable, the moment they feel that their former soulmate is no longer that person, that they have to deconnect and go off in search of this perfect relationship. That's not realistic. It's not healthy, and it's harmful to a wide array of people, not just you, which it is, not just your spouse, which it is, certainly your children, but to everyone in your whole family. If there is an unfortunate situation, everyone in the family is hurting. And avoiding that to maintain something that is then positive should be the goal of every person, and should be something that spurs people toward marriage rather than making people afraid. Oh no, I'll never accomplish that. And what I say is that a soulmate is someone that you build a relationship with. You can't start off in a marriage with a soulmate. The only way that you get a soulmate is by sharing experiences, by building these together, overcoming problems, dealing with issues, supporting one person when that person has a problem and can't make it through, and then that person can later support you in your problem. And I think that that's the key. A soulmate is something that you build, not something that you look for as a criterion for a relationship, for marriage. All you need is to share the basic values, that you're going to be committed to each other, that you look at what the other person is and what that person wants to be and feel, I can buy into that, I can support that. And then realize that you're never going to be the same. You're never going to be complete soulmates. And in Jewish tradition, each spouse is to be an ezer kenegdo. That's a helpmate, someone to help you, who is opposite and different from you. Not this romantic ideal of a soulmate, but someone who is different but invested and committed to you, such that they can tell you the truth and be there for you when you need it, and pull away when needed also, when not to support you, if that's the best thing for you as well. So all I can say is that a soulmate should not be the criterion for a relationship, and is something that you then come upon through experiences together and working on that connection over time.
So first of all, thank you for being brave enough to lead off every time. Lead off batter, it's a lonely position, but she does it well. I want to unpack a few things that you mentioned, Diane, because they're critical, especially in today's environment. This is now the year 2024, and it's the end of the month of February. Thankfully, this year we have a leap year and a leap day coming up. And it's fascinating because this show will live for many years to come, decades, maybe even centuries from now. I can see somebody looking back a century and I say, what were they talking about? Oh, yes, that thing. Okay. So you mentioned three particular words I just want to emphasize because I think they're absolutely fundamental to what's happening right now in the United States of America. And again, we are the tip of the spear for Western civilization. One of these words is security. The other word is family. And the third is sharing experiences. And the genius of the marriage process is exactly that. That, as you mentioned, the ability to be with another person and share experiences. Well, doesn't that portend something about where you can be together over years and decades of building? Because you talking about truth and values. Well, I could speak to this other person about what I believe, what are your values, your values. Okay, we can lie to each other initially because, hello, they're people trying to shift and make sure that you, put your best foot forward for somebody else. When you share real experiences and you're there to build a family, well, then now you're dealing, is it built on sand or is it built on solid place? And that brings in this idea of security. whether you're blessed to have children of your own or to be able to help with other people with children and such like that, when you can create a secure environment that people look at and say, wow, isn't that nice? That's really cool. Look at those people. Because that's what we want to do. We want to all live by example. I have a dear friend, happens to be, she was a psychologist also. She's taught me many years ago. She was a mentor of mine. I actually hired her as a coach. And she taught me, she says, example is not the only thing in influencing others. No, I'm sorry. Example is, example is the only thing that enables you to influence others. That's it. You can speak all day long. You can write all day long. It's the example. How do you show up in the real world? That's what really matters. So thank you. Security, family, sharing experiences. Wonderful, Maura. Let's talk about this article that I sent.
The question, I had all the answers, Barry.
What is this idea of romantic love and soulmate, baby?
Well, first of all, let me say this as I do privately whenever we're done with this. Thank you again for focusing on marriage. Our society doesn't focus on it enough. And when it does mention it, it's generally in a negative sense. The fact that you choose every month, month after month, to get us together so we could focus on it, not just as an entity, but the positives that it gives us, I think, is such an enormous gift to society. And may we have 50,000 people listening very soon. But with that said, on this, Diane, I'm sure you saw it, and you did too, Barry. Diane starts speaking, and I'm watching Lori and me. We are both in full agreement with the things you said. The difference between looking for that person that gets us all excited and finding someone who's our right mate for a marriage is like being infatuated with someone when you're in high school. Now, I must have been born an old soul, but I could remember this in high school. You're attracted to somebody. If you've got a good smile, you got to play the hide and seek. Do they like me? Do they like them? But it's like something that has a candle with a very short wick or a short fuse to it. And there's nothing there that's going to last. And so when you think about this whole idea of, I just want that perfect romantic partner, then what you're looking at is something that is it's infatuation, it's short-lived, it's short-sighted. And the other thing about it, it's very vulnerable. So in other words, I have this idea in mind, it looks great, but the first time something goes wrong and my expectations fail me, then what's left? Not much. So when I think about marriage, I want to give you this. It came to mind listening. And I think it may, anybody who's old enough to either remember the song or look back on it. There was a song called I Love You More Today Than Yesterday, but Not As Much As Tomorrow. It was Spiral Staircase, probably late 70s.
It was ultimate bubblegum music. Yes.
Sing it.
I know, I was a bubblegum person. But I have to tell you, my husband and I met 19 years old, 1977. And I could remember thinking, I wasn't even looking for a husband. When I met him, there were so many interactive things where he was interesting to me and vice versa. And what I learned in short order is that the longer we knew each other and the more a relationship grew, the more aspects I found in him and qualities that I really enjoyed and appreciated. That's the building of a long-term marriage. There are things in there that build on the future. They help establish not only what you're building for now, but a legacy for things to come. And when you think about it in the larger context, what you've got then is creativity. It's growth on a number of levels. And you're talking about, Barry, the idea of being an example. I was using the word modeling. You want to think about the best legacy you could leave to children and to grandchildren is for them to watch an enduring marriage relationship. The good days, the not so great days, the challenges, the ability to overcome some of the hardships. as I mentioned, the word creativity, an opportunity to say, this isn't ideal, but how are we going to work through it? And what you're doing is building up everybody in the process, and you're teaching the next generation to build various aspects of their character up. And if I could finish it this way, you opened up at the beginning of this, Barry, talking about how marriage isn't just the bedrock to individuals and to families, but it is to nations as well. When we have strong marriages and strong families, then what we have is a nation that has its own strength, that holds itself together above and beyond institutions and laws and changing values. It's something that becomes built into the fabric, the mindset, and the character of those that live in the marriage and in the family. So I'm going to say, yay to the longer term idea about building on a relationship that's going to be there for the future. Not everybody's going to look good 40 years down the pike as they did the first time they met you. Always looking for what's good, right?
I want to unpack a few words that you mentioned here, because it struck a really nice resonant chord. One of them is the V word, the vulnerable, that you said that when you are involved with another human being on this level of marriage, and again, I don't mind using the H word, the holiness word, because at least us, the four people in this world, in this room, we are oriented towards the idea of being holy, living a holy life. We're not ashamed or afraid to use the term. And when things happen in life, which they always will, there will always be challenges, difficulties that we could not even have thought of. And if you had a menu and say, well, I don't want that one, I don't want that one. God says, well, that's the one you're going to get. Okay, that's the way it is. Gee, we'll live with it. That vulnerability, when you have someone that you really work with, they can build together, you and Diane using the same word, about building, that's really what we're talking about here. This is an edifice that is as interesting as the Empire State Building, certainly more important to the world. I'm not just throwing out ideas and exponential thought and saying, oh, come on, Barry, two people married is as good as the Empire State Building. Yes, because we bring something that is that, like you said, the legacy. I like the idea of creativity. I mean, that's really fascinating. I think that's the most wonderful part of marriage. I mean, I can tell you, I'm married 47 years, just a little bit more than you, wonderful Maura. And
we're married 42, but we were dating for 4 years before that. So, all
okay,
right.
so you trump.
A long time, however you count it.
I have to tell you, creativity is certainly a part of a long marriage. I have to be creative, and my wife is creative. It's yes, because things happen, stuff goes on, and it's a vital part. There's another V word, a vital part. So the ability to be vulnerable, I love that, and to build, because that's, as we've talked about in other times we've been together, the ability to be able to open oneself up and live in truth. That's deep. That takes time. That takes trust. That's a really amazing aspect of real life that very few people, and I think you can attest to this, Lori, because you're dealing with people all the time. Diane, you'll attest to this is your profession. Laura, very few people ever can even get close to talking about the truth about themselves, let alone say, it's easy to point to somebody else. No, oh, that person. But about oneself, woo! And that's the genius, or part of the genius of marriage. So wonderful, Lori, in your beautiful kitchen in Southern California, in this great time of winter, talk to us about the romantic idea of a soulmate. And is it real or not?
I believe if you really start to think about a soulmate, when people ask you about that, is he my soulmate? Maybe I didn't marry my soulmate. I don't believe in soulmates. I believe if we're going to call somebody you would want to have sex with and combine yourself to be married with for a long time, I think there are thousands of them out there. So I think we could have a soulmate, if we're going to call it that, lots of them. But you find one that you like to have sex with, that you enjoy their company, and that, well, you're attracted to each other. And that's kind of like the base. But to me, that is not a soulmate. As Diane said, you have to build that up. But where I get people is when someone in the marriage says, yeah, we've been together 25 years. You're not doing it for me. This girl at work, she makes my buttons go. And you've never done that, because he forgot 25 years ago. That's why he married her, right? But now he finds this new person. He wants to be with her because this is what they say. She's my soulmate. And the wife is like, ha, what? Wait, wasn't I your soulmate? And they lose their minds because suddenly this idea came in that's going to destroy their marriage, that there's another human being on the planet that is their soulmate, and this guy decided it. But what's weird is sometimes men decide that lady over there that I don't know very well is my soulmate. And that poor lady doesn't know that he thinks this. It goes to the level of chaos. But the question goes back to, what are we doing? We're here to educate people on the reasons why they should stay married or get married, and what could be a soulmate. I have a man I love dearly who drives me freaking crazy. Some days I love him and he's my soulmate. Other days I'm like, we should never have met. But I know these will go past and we're going to get over it. It's not going to be shiny every day. But when you meet somebody new, we don't know what will happen. And if you meet them on unsolid ground to what you're talking about, if you meet someone on an affair or a sneaky relationship, that's never solid ground. And anything that is called a soulmate is actually a facade to divide up our world. That's my beliefs. And I truly believe at the end of the day, there's really no soulmate. There is somebody that you chose that you're going to be a partner with for the rest of your life. And what scares me now, just if I can add this on, is my kids don't believe in soulmates, and they also don't believe in marriage. Because, it's hard. Marriage is not easy. And if I could...
Wait a minute, it's not?
I want people to be educating children that marriage can be fun. It can be fun. Why aren't we having more fun? And that's what I show my kids now. Like, I make sure my husband and I are laughing and having fun, and they see us working together. Because if you had to do this, single parents, it's really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you mentioned a couple P words: parent, partner, fun, PHUNN. I had to say it because another P. And you're hitting on something that's truly wonderful. Actually, I'm sorry to use the word hitting on, because that's what happens with, especially with, men more than women. Let's be blunt. Men at whatever age, let's call it 40 to 50. They sometimes get a crazy idea that the button is not being pushed as much for the one they've been with for 10, 20 plus years. And I need my button pushed. Duh! That sounds like, as Maura said, high school, adolescent, short wick. They want a longer wick, but it's a short wick. I mean, it happens, I think, more with men than women. I'm just being very blunt. It's not an easy situation. And what you're bringing here, though, is absolutely fundamental. Because what we're doing is sharing with a lot of people who are listening to this, and people are shaking their heads and sending me notes and such like that. And we're talking truisms. We're dealing with human beings, fragile, wonderful, interesting beings that love to be tickled. They love to laugh. And when you can do it in the context of marriage, and especially if you have kids around and they see it, grandkids, that two human beings can actually enjoy being together. What an amazing idea. Even just something as fun as sitting together, watching a television show, eating. without the rectangle bothering anybody all the time. Actually people talking to each other, throwing spaghetti. I've done that before. Purposely, actually, just because. Yes. This is so wonderful what you're saying, because it's true. And you deal with women who are unfortunately are faced with this on a regular basis, that they have spouses that have a loose screw. I use that last word advisedly because that's part of what goes on. So it's an interesting dilemma. I was wondering, and now that we're talking together, if you'll allow me, I'm going to tell you a story for the three of you and everybody else is listening. And it's a story about my wife and myself and how I knew that this was my soulmate. And it was because it was based on values. And it's because something happened, talk about shared experience and such like that. So at the time we were living in Southern California, and there was a wonderful place called the Self-Realization Fellowship. Ever hear of it? A place was headed up by Swami Yogananda, Paramahasa Yogananda. Long hair. He wrote a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi, which I read when I was, 17 and went to Amsterdam and did all that kind of stuff. And that was one of my places that I wanted to go to when I first got to Southern California and was going to relocate and live there. It's an amazing, idyllic location, just absolutely beautiful. And so, Diane, you've been there a number of times, right? Okay, so it's wonderful. So imagine I'm walking. So I had just met this wonderful woman, Naomi. We worked in the same place together, the place called the Gemological Institute of America, the GIA. And I asked her out, would you like to go out? I'm going to take you to this place, the Self-Realization Fellowship. It's a beautiful place to walk around. So we went on a Sunday and we're there, we just walk in. It takes about 25, 30 minutes plus or minus to walk around the lake. It's really a shrine. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the vibe is so perfect. And it's Southern California. And as we're walking and finishing the walk, and we're talking, just getting to know each other a bit, right? I stepped on something. I looked down and it was green, even though I'm colorblind, and it was a stack of money. It was a wad of $100 bills.
Oh my God.
38 of them to be exact. $3,800 that I stepped on. Looked down, picked it up, and said, "Whoa, that's a lot of money." That was at that time when it was 1976. So that's almost 50 years ago, right? That's a lot of money. That was a month's pay for where I was working. Now, here was the best part. I've been out with a number of women over my life. There were a couple of people that I dated that easily would have said, "Wow, Las Vegas, baby. Let's go." Or, "Oh, let's go out and enjoy ourselves." Or many things somebody could have said, right? Mm-hmm. What did my I didn't know at the time, future wife say? Somebody lost that. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We have to find a way to get it back to them. I'm telling you, I'm crying saying the story because I fell in love, right? Because that's what I was thinking also. By the same token, it's nice to know that the person that I'm talking with here and such felt that same. I mean, it was just a perfect vibe, right? So we went and you have to understand, of course, this is 50 years ago. So there were no cell phones, no internet, and we went to I was going to say the checkout place, but back to the beginning and went to the office and I just said my name and my phone number. I had a landline with a cord, my telephone number, and I said, "We found something. So if somebody lost them, you let us give my number." Okay, that was Sunday, and we had a cup of tea at the Inn of the Seventh Ray up in Topanga Canyon. Another great place. Okay, it was just wonderful. I had this $3,800 in my pocket, which, by the way, I could use. I mean, that's a lot of money. Went to work the next day. Didn't tell anybody about it. I carried the money with me. I didn't want to leave it in my apartment, right? Because it's not, I had to protect it. Right? And then got home about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and I got a phone call. I answered the phone. Imagine those days you answer the phone, didn't know the machine and such. This person said, my name is so-and-so, and I lost something at self-realization. They gave me your number. I said, nice to meet you. What is it you lost? And a woman's voice, and she said it was $3,800 in $100 bills. I said, it's yours. She said, actually, no. What I'd like you to do is go back there and donate it. I'm telling you, it was, I'm crying thinking about this. It was just so romantic and wonderful. Isn't it a great story? And so when I saw my girlfriend about to be wife the next day, I told her, she was so happy. It was wonderful. This could be the start of something big.
Did you donate it or did you keep it?
Yeah, no, we donated it.
Oh, it's like donated to you? Just kidding.
No, back to the SRF. It was a perfect, complete way of doing things. It was, but imagine stepping on this hundreds of dollars and thousands, actually. So this was the relationship that was built with my wife, my then to be wife. And as time went on, even in the 6, 7, 8, and 9 months that we dated before we got married, it was pure her. That's just, I mean, we danced at Diane's wedding, Diane and Michael's wedding. You know, she's sweet, she's wonderful, she's loving, and she's tough. I mean, tough. My wife is very tough. I have to be creative. I mean, we're married 47 years. I have to be creative because stuff happens. I used to be a quadriplegic overnight, and she had to take care of me. I don't know if I won't monopolize it now and tell you, but there was a time when, because I was paralyzed, she got up 3 times a night to turn me over, like rotisserie, basting and stuff. And she weighs all of 90 pounds, picking up this body and turning me over. It's like I couldn't move. So there's all these things we've been talking about here is the ability to have a family, security, expanding one's consciousness, delving closer to the truth of the human being, and loving it and having fun. She won't let me tickle her anymore, but I try to. I get close. But that ability to live in this world called joy is truly amazing to me. And you're right, Lori, as you pointed out. I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to share with other people, to say, we're no different than you are. It's all about you being the best you. Everybody watch it. And we all know that every marriage has a challenge by definition. It wouldn't be a marriage if it didn't, right? Well, as Diane brings up, in Hebrew they call it Ezer Kenegdo. And I had an early teacher who actually I stayed in touch with for 30 years, who said it can be like sandpaper. Sandpaper is used to smooth a surface, right? But there are different grades of sandpaper. It's a very rough sandpaper, then there's a softer one, and there's a very fine.
I'm starting with Barry, so I'm looking at the circles going around.
I'm sorry? What was that? Maura, did you say something?
Trouble connecting. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Hello? Can you hear me? Lori, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think Maura lost you.
She's frozen.
No, we lost Maura. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a few more minutes. I'd like to go a quick round. We'll call it a lightning round. Maura, I think we lost you, but you'll get back. Okay, Diane, if you be kind enough to speak to one more piece on this romance idea of soulmate, and speak to us, please, about the idea of responsibility as a part of romance. In other words, people tend to think romance is flowers and candy and dinners and candlelight, right? And yet responsibility is what makes all those things work. So we're asking you as the authority. Yes. now you're the psychologist hat, not just your Diane hat. Talk to us about responsibility in the process of marriage.
I think responsibility has two angles. One of them is how each marital partner sees his or her responsibility. And when you get married, then you want to be responsible for your partner in terms of their well-being. And you want to be responsible for the family you create in terms of its success and being able to launch your children together with your partner. From your end, you want to take on responsibility because that's how you connect with the other person. However, in the context of real life marriages nowadays, the word responsibility means who's going to do what. And what that usually means is we negotiate. We decide together whose responsibility is each aspect of the relationship. In other words, it could be that the old-fashioned days when a woman was having babies, she didn't take 2 weeks off. She may have decided that she wanted to stay home with the children. Now that's not considered a very feasible thing or possible thing or desirable thing, but people might take a time of life to be responsible for the raising of children and then switch it, renegotiate it as the children get older or as someone gets another ambition or as one person wants to leave one aspect of life and turn into something else. Then the partner might want to fill in that gap and take responsibility. But what that is just the reality of life. You can see it as responsibility or you can see it as privilege. When I'm being married to my husband every day, I have Michael Medved, who's a genius, who knows everything and is so sweet, and I consider it a privilege. So when I can make his coffee every morning, which is one of the things that's his love language, I don't consider that a responsibility. I consider it a joy because you can make the responsibilities into the joy of marriage. That's why we're here. And so I see it as something that is positive. Taking care of him when he had cancer was really, really hard on me. However, I had to rise to the occasion and I was responsible for his being alive for a certain period of time. And that's what you do as part of marriage because things change all the time and responsibilities can be privileges and they can be just part of the ebb and flow of life. You don't have to see them as negative or even have to see them as positive. It's better to see them as positive. If you can spin anything into a positive, you're probably going to enjoy it more and you're going to probably feel better about it in retrospect and as part of your future. So yes, spin things to positive. But I'm just saying that things are going to change right and left. Life is never static. And so responsibilities change. And if you can take onto yourself, not as a responsibility, but as part of a partnership to accomplish things, then you can say you're getting the responsibilities done. But it's really just part of life.
So this is delightful. And thank you for using the examples of you and Michael and doing certain things that, but the underlying aspect of all of this is that, yes, this is such a thing called life. By definition, it's not static. And that's the genius of life. It's we want to call it an ebb and a flow, like the ocean and such. It's so beautiful to behold and recognize that there will be storms. Okay, so what do you do in a storm? You weather it. And you can weather it and you can grimace, or you can weather it and say, look at this, we can do this. To know that you can rise to that occasion, let's say in your case with Michael, and Michael had life-threatening cancer. Hello? Stuff happens. It's real life. And now he doesn't. It's quite wonderful and such. Lori, responsibility. Responsibility, other R. We had romance, we had responsibility. And I think this plays into your world very, very strongly because you're dealing daily with people, and I can't even imagine the pressures on you fielding calls and such from people who are telling you their world is being ripped apart by somebody who's not being responsible. I mean, I'm laying that on it in a true way. So how do you see responsibility in the context of a romantic, beautiful, loving marriage?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I have so many things about the storm, weathering a storm. The idea is never to go hide or quit. Sometimes you want to go get a bottle of shampoo and do your hair because rainwater is good for it. That's what the joke. Okay. So responsibility, a lot of the men in the marriages of the women that I talk to leave the marriage because they don't want responsibility. They don't want to have to worry about taking care of the kids and worrying about finances and taking care of the college. It becomes so overwhelming that they just want to be free from it because they met Susie, who is this lovely blanket, and they can go be with Susie and not have to deal with the responsibilities. So that's kind of why they exit. So if you're asking me, what is the responsibility that makes the good part of the marriage when two people are in it together, I can answer that. And that is just showing up. The responsibility is just showing up. You might not know how to do it. You might not have the answers, but you show up and you say, I'm here. What do we do now? And that to me is the part I think people forget, that they actually have a partner that really wants them to succeed. Like if you ever give a speech somewhere and you get up and you're nervous and you're like terrified people won't like you, everyone in that audience wants you to be successful. Everyone in a marriage wants the marriage to be successful, but everyone is putting the other weight on the other person, waiting to see what they'll do because they don't want to carry it. But if they know the other person is willing to do something, they just don't know what, vulnerability, as was spoken about earlier, then the responsibility gets shared by two people, and it's not that tough.
You're saying something wonderful here. So first of all, the word responsibility is two words. The ability to respond. Like you said, just showing up. It's, all of this stuff, the kids and this and on college and that. It could be over. It's a lot if you start thinking like that. If you start thinking, well, Emily, what do we do? Well, John, I don't know, let's talk about it.
Yeah, but not to interrupt you, but the next line is, what do we do? Well, I don't know. You screwed it all up last week. And then it goes chaos. But the responsibility of staying together and not going back with the kitchen sink. And
yes. And by the way, that's not easy because it's deep emotion, deep hurt. Look, you've been through it. You're not the wife expert because you decided to hang out a shingle saying, I'm the wife expert. You've been through stuff. And the ability to now speak about it without getting back into that muck and mire, which is quite horrible and stinky and all kinds of stuff, doesn't bring anybody benefit. So to rise above that, that's a great responsibility called adulthood. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to go into a little tough territory. I find it difficult to understand. They have something called an adult bookstore, or they used to call adult theaters. Those are euphemisms for stuff. I never understood it. To me, it was obviously some euphemism because it's the opposite. If you want to be childish, high school stuff, it's not adult bookstores. Adult bookstores would have, I guess, Encyclopedia Britannica, or volumes of Nietzsche in the original German. But these are stupid things. The ability to rise above a situation, and like you said, just show up. Just showing up is profound. I'm being very blunt. That's really profound. The ability to hold somebody's hand and say, I don't know what we're going to do, honey. We'll find a way. I'm crying. Because it works, right? It does work. Okay, it might not be simple. It's not simple. Not easy, but it works. And that's the genius of stuff. Now we have a technical glitch because we lost Maura here. She's lost his Steve. The storm has taken Maura away from us, but she'll be back for our next session next month in the month of March, which comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb, as we used to say in New England. You should we should be seeing clear skies soon. Wonderful Diane and such. And Lori, it's always a delight and a pleasure. So on this high note of finding our soulmates, which can go from SOUL into SOLE, and being the mate that we have for, God willing, our lives. You should be able to choose well, to rise to occasion, and to show up and to do the small things in life that make a difference. Whether it's making coffee for somebody or chocolate. My wife, if I showed you what my wife makes me for my breakfast every day, it's a work of art. I make videos about it and post them sometimes because it still makes me cry.
Is it good or bad? Just kidding.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's just it's so wonderful. So again, as we finish up our show, we do our group hug and we do a blessing. So are we ready, kids? Remember, hug stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. On the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And our blessing from Diane and Lori and Maura and Barry is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.